Hi, and welcome to the Kite Channel Lounge, the cybersecurity podcast, dodging the vendor sales pitches and delivering genuine insights, news, and predictions. Hopefully, we're going to have some fun on the way too. I'm your host, Stuart Nan Clark. Today's episode is titled Quantum Shifts, Adapting to the New Era of Digital Trust, and I'm joined by the team at DigiCert. Andy Deacon, Senior Channel Sales Engineer.
Hey everyone.
And Byron Bartlett, Senior Channel Manager for North EMEA. How you doing, guys?
Yeah, really good.
Good
to be here, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I say this to all the guests, but it's a bit new, isn't it, this whole podcast piece in the studio? How are you finding it?
A little bit new, yeah. Certainly a first for me. So, avid listener of podcasts myself, but first time in the studio. So, nice to experience it.
I don't know, it's the most professional one I've been on. I like this. This is great. It's like a massive upgrade on the others. So, enjoying it. It's all good.
And what sort of podcast do you listen to?
Well, I mean, I've got a bit of a cocktail of podcasts going on at the moment, but I'm meant to be running the marathon next year, so I'm desperately trying to find something that something within, something I've not quite discovered yet. So I was listening to one on the way up about David Goggins, the ultra marathon runner. Just pretty crazy. But no, sort of dip into sports, sort of self-help, self-development, that sort of stuff as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Andy?
Do you know what? Podcasts, it's interesting. I've not listened to that many podcasts. It's more the video ones on YouTube for like nature photography and stuff like that. I do tune into the odd kind of cybersecurity podcast if the topic looks really interesting, but I'm not like an avid subscriber to one channel yet. So maybe this is going to be the channel I subscribe to.
Yeah, I hope so. So look, before we kind of jump in terms of a bit of a background and introduction to yourselves, how do you find yourself here, in terms of this cybersecurity world that we're all in? It's really good to give the listeners insight, really, because we all take different paths. So maybe yourself, how?
Yeah, I certainly didn't take a conventional path. How am I here today? Well, left school, no idea what I wanted to do other than earn money. Left school, went and worked for my stepfather at the time. First job was fitting tyres in a garage all day, every day. It wasn't the most fun, but he paid me quite well for it. But I always knew that there was something else out there. So, I guess my break in channel came. I lived quite local to a distributor at the time, Exertis, formerly known as Micro P. They were a slightly smaller outfit back then. Went and applied for a role and found my way in. Had a great mentor, great leader, a guy called Steve Cuthbert, SC. He sort of taught me the foundations of, I guess, how technology flows through channel, great leader. And then, from there, sort of moved into my first vendor role, sort of 5.5 years after that. And joined DigiCert earlier this year. So purely by chance, but I guess, I've heard it a couple of times in some of your previous podcasts. The beauty of this industry is it takes you on so many different unexpected paths. So
totally.
I'm probably a good testament to that.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's an interesting one. It's never something I actively sort of said, yes, I'm going to go into computing, I'm going to go into security. I think I'd actively tried to do anything but that for a long time, but ended up down this path. Started off sort of more technical, actually. So I ended up in test, as it was at the time, Q&A, working for an organisation that used to make external hard drive chips that would translate USB to IDE at that time. Then wound up at a cybersecurity vendor, again in test. So I was their lead test engineer for the monthly AV release. And then through a chance encounter, ended up moving across into sales engineering. And that's kind of where I've been ever since, apart from a brief respite as a enablement guy at a large telco. And then DigiCert. So
I should have said as well, 13 years I've been in channel now.
Yeah.
And in the 13 years I've been in channel, I've never worked with Kite. So again, in terms of, the opportunity that channel presents, first time working with you guys since joining DigiCert, really enjoying it. So
fantastic.
And I'm not going to say how long I've been around because it'll ruin my sort of baby face look I've got going on.
Yeah.
So I guess, look, over the last few years really kind of carving your way in this industry. But in terms of the space that we're in, I guess, trust, identity at this part in your career, what really drew you towards DigiCert and in particular this kind of area of cybersecurity?
Oh, shall I go first
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
one? So I think it was two things. One, they called me, which is brilliant. So that was a great, like when they asked that interview question, like, well, you called me, guys, you tell me. But in all seriousness, it's a perfect time to be in this part of the security industry. It's a part that's got a spotlight being shined on it at the moment. It's going through tremendous change, and it's quite exciting about what's going to come out the other side. There's lots of importance associated with kind of digital trust and things like that. And there's been a growing realization over the years. And, you know, I've been involved with solution architecting for major organizations around zero trust and stuff like that. And the one thing everybody always sort of neglects is the PKI piece. Mm-hmm. And it's beginning to now become part of actually the whole trust thing is moving from zero trust to, well, we need a bit of trust in there, but we've got to have some verification. And that's really where the digital trust stuff comes in. I think the biggest eye-opener for me, and I'm sure Byron will talk about this as well, is you come across DigiCert and trust in places that you just wouldn't even think about. Like on a daily basis, you are interacting with the things that we do or produce or support, and you just don't know anything about it, which actually is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think maybe just a segue on the back of that. You know, I was working for a vendor called Proofpoint for just over 2 years. You know, really sort of mature market offering, you know, email security, DLP. But again, once I started to learn a bit more about DigiCert, to Andy's point, all the places we're in that we probably take for granted. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, that and the fact that we're going through a bit of a sort of renaissance as an industry, you know, there's some significant tailwinds, which I know we're going to talk about today. You know, that and the fact we've got tremendous leadership, tremendous, you know, product offering. And I guess a big one for me, certainly tying it back to channel, you know, the opportunity in channel is huge. So, yeah, probably too good an opportunity to miss, really.
I agree. And I think we should come back in terms of that channel opportunity. I think as we go through the conversation, we'll probably wrap up with that. Now, one of the things that has come up on all of the podcasts that we've done, and just as the industry as a whole, we're really guilty of making things overcomplicated, adding to the noise that's out there. So I guess, look, before we delve into the huge opportunity there and some real key talking points, if we were going to introduce DigiCert to our grandparents, really take it back into layman's terms, what are we doing?
I love it. Well, for me, if you use the analogy of, you know, when you go to the airport, you know, you check your bag in, and then you've got to obviously cross that border, right? Someone's got to check to make sure that I am who I say I am. So there's one thing showing your passport and standing next to it and looking like, you know, the sort of two look the same. But where was that passport issued from? You know, obviously from mine, it's the British government, right? So at that point, border control, they're okay with who I am, so they're going to let me board that plane. PKI is pretty much the same thing, right? In terms of, you know, is this person who they say they are? Is this piece of, you know, code, document, software, whatever the case, from A to B, has that been tampered with, or is it, you know, fully, you know, got that integrity, that trust layer from start to finish? So it's that element of trust, and I guess the backbone that that gives confidence and, you know, sort of clarity in every transaction that we make. So that's how, for me, certainly joining DigiCert earlier this year, that's when it clicked for me in terms of what PKI is.
I love it.
Yeah, I think you stole the airport analogy. I can't use that one now.
Maybe you told me it. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I think you touched on a really important point, though, when you said like the sort of trust integrity and trust identity. And that's really the core thing here is how do you trust the thing that you're looking at? And that's where DigiCert comes in, is we help people to go, actually, we've verified that is what it says it is. And that's the kind of service and thing that we reply. And that's going to be huge over the next few years. Like that whole thing is going to explode. This is going to go out into places that you don't think, with AI and all that sort of stuff. But there has to be some sort of verification of trust. And that's what we do.
So for me, one of the biggest changes that I can see here, and why the market is really coming towards us right now is the shortened certificate life cycles. So I guess, Andy, for me, can you break down what's actually changing, why this matters, and why are these organisations and browsers pushing for these shorter life cycles?
I can try. So the big thing really is, and it's something that's been happening gradually. There's just been a real push to sort of close this shortening life cycles down. And this is for public PKI that we're talking around. Now, what it means is currently you can issue for a year and your certificate's valid for the year. That's slowly going to come down over the next few years to 47 days. The whole emphasis around this actually is to improve security. It's around making things less risky. It's around being able to control and drive things a little bit more. You can revoke certificates and things like that, but it's an onerous process and it isn't instantaneous. So if you've got certificates out there with shortened life cycles, they're going to naturally expire. And that's one of the key security things. Now, the other thing is a lot of the checks around that are going to have to, so if you have a domain validated certificate, so if that's website and that's what you're validating against with your DNS and etc. Trying to go too technical here. That's going to be every 10 days in 4 years' time. You're going to have to verify that you still own the domain and that site is still yours every 10 days. And that's the length that you're going to have to do. It's all around making things less risky for individuals and consumers out there on the internet and all that sort of stuff. That's why the browsers are pushing it so hard. It's about improving security for everybody. There's no big nefarious thing or anything else like that. And I've heard lots of things of, it's not going to happen. It is happening. It's set in stone. And what surprised everybody was, Google for a long time had been pushing for 90 days. And there was a bit of pushback and a bit of all this and the other stuff. Apple walk in and go 47 days. Everybody goes, okay. But you'll see that there is a year's pause. And that is because organizations went, that's a little bit too quick for us to make those changes to come down. So that's why you have a year's pause before we hit the 47-day point. Personally, I can't see it stopping at 47 days. I think this is a trajectory they're going to do on. My personal view is it'll get down to 10 days.
Okay. So I guess what we can take from that is that previously this was a nice to have, right?
Yeah.
It helped, but it's non-negotiable now, really, in terms of that. I mean, there's not many other ways around it, right?
There's no other way around it. It's totally, this is happening. But the great thing about it is you have a time window to hit this 47-day and you can do things about it sooner rather than later. But the way I would view this is actually a positive change that's being forced in, because it lets people kind of do things rather than just go automatically, I'm just going to issue the cert. It's a year and it's valid for a year. I might use it for 30 days, but it's still valid for the year. Well, if something happens, then it's still valid for that year, right? And there's a huge risk around that. But actually, this means as an organization, you can take risk-based decisions. So you can go, actually, I'm only going to stand this marketing website up for 10 days. I'm just going to issue a 10-day validity certificate. That's the mindset that it's trying to get people into, is to be a little bit more mindful about what they're doing and not just going, this is it. The other benefit that it's got is it's pulling PKI out of the cupboard, because this traditionally has been viewed, it's kept in a cupboard. There's one guy that knows how to do it. There's one guy that does all this sort of stuff. And once a year he works his black magic and we're not really sure what he does.
Yeah.
This is pulling this out of the cupboard. People have got to be more aware of this. And this is one of the challenges actually facing the industry. But it's a good challenge. It's a maturing challenge. It's an improving challenge.
So, Byron, I guess talking about that challenge and from your role, in terms of the channel, are we starting to see the channel adapt or any kind of feedback from the channel in this kind of area? And I think just to kind of say from my side of things, and you talk about it coming out of the cupboard, I think this is probably the one area of cybersecurity, even for me as an individual, that not that I've kept away from, but hasn't really been at the forefront. Kite as a distributor have been in this space since inception 11 years ago. But, when people talk about the whole firewall, IPS, IDS, everything that came first, this was always one I think that some partners have steered away from. What are you seeing?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, look, I look after quite a diverse sort of territory. So, spent a lot of time in the Middle East, Africa, Northern Europe, obviously UK. One common theme, to your point, partners are still steering away from it at the moment. And I think, there's going to come a point next year, certainly, where they're going to have no choice but to be proactive in this space. So, I think in terms of sort of general channel awareness, there's still a long way for us to go. I think, obviously, again, with some of the industry sort of tailwinds that we're sort of talking about today, that's going to help put a spotlight, to use the analogy that Andy used. It's coming out the cupboard now. Partners are going to have no choice but to embrace this. But yeah, I think one common theme, that I've certainly seen across the markets, obviously with the exclusion to yourselves, who, as you said, you've got, a sort of a long sort of stint within this space. There's a lot of partners out there who have a gap. And it's not as scary as it sounds. And I think, for me, the way I look at PKI, certainly when we use the word trust, it underpins so much of what is already out there. So putting the spotlight on this as a sort of, as an amplifier, as a complementary sort of product and solution that can be sold in line with everything else our partners are already well established at doing. For me, that's how I want partners to be able to look at this. So, we have a long way to go, but I think we're starting to sort of, the tide is starting to turn in that space now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess we talked about kind of the challenge and the drivers for it, but what kind of problems does this cause for the end user? And what are their options? What can they do to try and mitigate this this condensed time frame?
Yeah, I mean, so the challenge you've got really is, at the moment, let's say you have 5 websites. We'll keep it really straightforward. You've got 5 websites and you've got 5 certs on there. So the browser goes, yes, this is a trusted website. And let's say it's a perfect world and you instantiate all 5 of those websites on the same day. So your certificate runs out on the same day. So once a year, one guy or girl comes in and they reissue certificates for those websites, re-upload them onto the web server, and they're valid for another year. And they do that once a year for the 5 websites. Now, it's not a perfect world, right? So what's happening is I do it for a year, but maybe I have to do those 5 times a year because they're all going at different times. Okay, so that's now 5 times. And now the validity drops to 200 days in March 2026. So now I'm doing it 10 times.
Yeah.
And then it drops again and again. Now, this means that actually, even if you've only got 5, you could argue the case that with 5 websites, possibly one person can keep abreast of this and you can just do it. But people don't just have 5 certs. That's the problem. And it means that actually you could be manually changing certs every week or every couple of weeks. That's quite onerous. There's lots of mistakes that can be made. There's lots of outages you can get. It plays havoc with an organization's kind of resilience and business continuity and all that sort of stuff. Because the great thing about PKI is a blessing and a curse. When PKI works, nobody knows. It's just there in the background. It's doing things. When PKI breaks, it breaks horribly and everything falls down. You can't access websites. You can't access services. You can't log into things. That's how underpinning it is. PKI is even found in things like, so if you go into hospital and they put a remote heart monitor on you, there's PKI in that. These are the sorts of things that you don't realise where PKI is. Now, they're probably not going to be so affected by some of the changes, but again, it affects some of those things in different ways. But for me, the option you've got is twofold, really. You, as an end customer, you buy a piece of software like DigiCert, and you run it, you maintain it, you manage it yourself, and you take another piece of software on. Or, as a partner, you go, hey, I want to build you a service around that, and I'll take the pain away for you. Mm-hmm. That's the options. And I think, for especially more lower enterprise mid-market, I probably see that going more, I'm going to take that as a service, because I don't have that much in terms capability in terms of staff. It's somebody else I've got to train up. It's something else I've got to maintain and manage when I already take a lot of services. So I'm going to do this. And that's a great opportunity to talk about later on for partners is customers don't know what to do around this. Mm-hmm. There's a huge gap there. So this is prime for partners to come in and go, it's okay, we got you. This is how you do it. Also
to add, I think, there's an element, customers don't know what to do, but they also don't know where their risk is at the moment either. Mm-hmm. When we talk about the word trust, I certainly took it for granted until I joined DigiCert in terms of the trust that is at the backbone of everything that we do. And when you look at the landscape in which we live in, everything is got a backbone of digital footprint one way or another, and that backbone is built on a layer of trust. So when you sort of throw into the mix shortening of certificate life cycles, it's like the options are pretty limited, other than you've got to start to discover where your risk sort of profile lies and move into that sort of automation phase. And that's where it becomes, I think, a bit scary for both customers and partners as well.
And I think just to add something, because I know there'll be especially more technical listeners out there going, oh, but zero trust is all about not trust. Well, it isn't. Zero trust is all about verifying trust and having the ability to verify trust. And that's exactly what PKI gives you. And that's kind of one of these sort of slightly misunderstood nuances around this is zero trust is a paradigm, a way of thinking. But you've got to be able to have some form of going, do I trust that? Do I validate it? That's where the certs and the PKI really comes into play.
Yeah. And Byron, to your point, right, it screams automation, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It screams automation. I think for most of the cybersecurity challenges out there, you can throw people or tools at it. That's not going to help in this instance, is it?
Well, I think the pace in which this is going to happen in terms of the change, you're not going to be able to keep pace doing it manually. You have no option, in my view. Well, I think it's going to be pretty apparent that the only answer is to go sort of down a sort of solution, a tooling, a services, sort of route that takes that pain away, not necessarily there and then, but automates it moving forwards as well. I think that's really important to sort of understand is our digital footprint is constantly changing. It's constantly expanding. So once you take the problem away, it doesn't mean it's not going to resurface. You have to make sure you go on that sort of automation journey. And, I think I read a stat recently, 47% of companies are still issuing certificates on a rogue basis. So they're just throwing certificates out there with no management or sort of, protocol around sort of renewing or sort of redundancy, sort of failover. So, the problem, as I said, is actually probably going to become bigger.
And you make a really valid point here, and this is the other thing to kind of clear up and dispel the myth around, right? Automation isn't the start point. Automation is where you finish. Okay, so you've got to know where the stuff is. It's all about discovery. You've got to know how you're using it, what you're using it, what policies and profiles. What's your risk profile here? Is this thing that you're assigning a cert to particularly risky? If it is, maybe I'm going to shorten the timescale so that my risk window is smaller. All of these conversations and things need to happen, but a lot of the time, end customers and partners aren't kind of thinking the full process through. They're just going, right, I'm going to automate this. Great, good, but you've got to figure out all of this first to get there. Once you've then got the automation in, it's effectively a fire and forget, as long as your risk profile doesn't change. And then you just come back in and you tweak the settings and it carries on again. But that's where you get to. It's not the starting point.
Totally. So let's kind of maybe dip into that point around the partner's role in this journey as well, in terms of where do they fit in terms of helping and guide these customers? Firstly, understanding where they are,
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of different ways in which we can answer that, right? Is, the partners who are embracing this sort of renaissance that's happening in the industry, they're going to be the ones that benefit sort of, longer down the line. But I think the here and now where this problem is sort of bubbling beneath the surface, it's becoming more of an issue for customers. They're aware of it, but don't necessarily have, the resource or sort of internal sort of tools to be able to manage it themselves. I think initially the partner's role is to listen, listen for where their customers think their pain is. And then as a partner, certainly the more established ones in the market who have got multiple different options on their portfolio in terms of vendors to go out and get clarity to, that's where you need to bring in, a DigiCert to help you add that clarity and reassurance to your customer that, look, we've got a vendor here who's going to help take that problem away for you, but we are going to have to go through this process. So, I think it's looking at it from a relatively sort of, pragmatic, but sort of open-minded viewpoint that, we might not necessarily find all the answers straight away, but again, to Andy's point, the discovery piece is so important, and I think that's where again a partner can add significant value in that journey.
Yeah, I think the other interesting thing to note as well is the 200, 100 day pause 47 is often on a horizontal timeline. You see it like this, actually. But a colleague of mine pointed something out, and I think it's brilliant, is actually that maps the IT adoption curve perfectly. And so the takeaway here for partners is you want to be thinking about and activating what you're going to do in the 200 to 100 day window, because that's when the adoption starts to come up, right? So if you don't at that point as a partner, if you haven't made a move on this and you haven't done something, you don't want to be here when everybody's scrambling around for 47 days, because I would imagine 70 to 80% of the market have already done something about it, and you've missed the boat. The people who are here, that's going to be fun, right, for those guys, and there's going to be some chaos. But I think the whole thing around this as well is there's other aspects to this. So this isn't just the shortening life cycles that's timing this. There's a few other industry headwinds that are coming in, like quantum and various other things. It's going to cause some chaos. But the great thing is, if you get this fix in place, you kind of fix it for everything else as well. And we can explore that a little bit later on.
Yeah, totally. I do want to jump into quantum. I think just to kind of finish on this particular area in terms of the lifecycle management. We talked about end users being at different parts of their journey, or not even aware yet, right? But is there anyone that we could maybe reference in terms of that has been on that journey and successfully ahead of the curve? Are we not there yet?
I think privately, there's organisations out there making moves and sort of fixing this and have that kind of mindset and are going through that process, and some are very close to being on the other side of it. Publicly, I don't think we're there where anybody can go, these are the guiding light. A couple of reasons for one. It's when you get into this is quite deep into their security stack, because it underpins most of their other security stack, like identity access, VPN, all of that sort of stuff. It underpins. So there'll be a reluctance to kind of really talk about it and go, hey, this is what I did. But the other thing as well is this is going to be unique on a company basis. So what and how one company fixes it and what their risk profile is will be very different to another. So you're not going to get this kind of golden template
I understand.
Scenario, really. So
I think maybe just to add as well, I guess without sort of naming any of some of our customers' names, but if you look at the sort of demographic of customer, the larger the customer, generally speaking, the sort of larger enterprises out there, they've probably got now a team dedicated and focused around the quantum threat, right? So does that then tie into what they're doing about lifecycle management? Most likely. The SMBs of this world, they don't have that luxury, right? They don't have deep pockets. So again, in terms of, I think it very much depends on the customer, maybe the sort of regulatory challenges that they're being faced with as well. Again, this isn't a case of if this problem is going to exist. It's a case of when. And I think, the timescale attached to that will vary by customer and sort of size as well. So
brilliant. No, that's really good insights. Really good insights. So quantum, we've mentioned it a couple of times already, right? So let's jump straight in. So frankly, let's demystify it, right? What is quantum computing? And when should we start worrying about it?
Andy,
do you want to take that one?
The floor is yours.
Right, okay. I know what you bought me now. So look, quantum is just a different way of computing and calculating ones and zeros and various other things. It's based on some different maths, and it will be and is much faster than traditional sort of silicon x86 RISC type CPUs, right? The challenge is that it's still in development and it's not commercially available. That's the kind of big thing. Now, all the cloud providers and everybody's working towards, hey, we're going to put this and you're going to be able to book time on quantum, and we've got this, and they're building their own chips and their own infrastructure and their own date. The challenge you've got is that nobody knows when. There isn't a fixed date in time. And quantum, in terms of scale of problem and challenge and the sort of disruption it is going to have, is very similar to the Y2K bug, for those of us old enough to remember that. And the reason the Y2K bug was a real damp squib when it came, and it was like, oh, was the sheer amount of work and effort everybody put into making sure that it was that damn script. We have to do the thing with quantum, but we don't have a date. And this is the real challenge. Like, they could turn around tomorrow and go, quantum's here. Now, the moment they do that, the computational power of quantum means that our current encryption algorithms will be cracked like that. No problem at all. That's the power of quantum. That's the risk here. And that's what they're trying to do. Now, in terms of how you safeguard against that, there's been a lot of research, and there's various sort of mathematical proofs here that by doing different maths for encryption, you can have something that's quantum resistant. And that's what they're looking for. Now, NIST have approved several quantum resistant algorithms based on a certain type of mathematics. They've also now soft proved another form of mathematics that they say is quantum resistant, and that's they're going to introduce in 2027. I think they announced that a couple of days ago. So the algorithms are there. We know how to be resistant to quantum. The two things we don't know is, one, when quantum's going to land and be commercially available, and therefore all encryption breaks at that point. That's really that point. The second thing is, all vendors who use PKI and various other things or encryption now have to bake in quantum encryption into their product set. Now, the quantum encryption keys are much bigger. So now you run into the challenge of, does my device have enough computational power to support quantum? So this is going to actually have a ripple effect. So there's massive infrastructure changes and all sorts that will be a result of this. Organizations can't sweat assets anymore once this comes in, because maybe those devices aren't powerful enough. This is kind of really the level of disruption we're talking about. But it ties in perfectly into the automation and what's going on, because if you fix the automation piece for the 200, 100 a day, and you know where your certs are, you can go in and go, I'm going to change that profile, and now I'm issuing a quantum certificate down to that because that device now supports it. That's it. That's the fix. That's quantum agility. That's where everybody's trying to get to. Not quantum agility, even crypto agility. Get the words right, Andy. That's crypto agility, right? That's where we all want to get to. And that's all that means, is that I can quickly change what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and where I'm doing it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
No, it's great. Look, it's certainly on the horizon. So I guess, Byron, from your side, how can partners turn this emerging risk, despite there not being an end date, but into a conversation, leaning on that journey piece, in terms of future-proofing trust and future-proofing solutions?
I think for me, again, embrace it. There's very rare, part of the reason I joined DigiCert, it's very, very rare that sort of tailwinds of this magnitude sort of surface. So, embrace it. Just the word itself is sort of quite scary. It will certainly maybe send you to sleep or keep you up at night. Depends what type of person you are. But, embrace it, because again, to Andy's point, there's going to be a massive hardware refresh that goes throughout the channel because of this threat. But also, what else underpins that trust layer again? Going back to the word trust. So, embrace this. I think, I look at this as a significant revenue opportunity for partners without necessarily having to go out and acquire a new customer. Customer acquisition is incredibly difficult, just as it is for, partners out there as well, right? So, embrace the change. Don't be scared by it, act now, because again, this problem, without knowing a definitive time date, could surface, a lot quicker than we anticipate.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect, attached to that, it's not going to be isolated to one area of your customer's business. It's going to have a ripple effect, throughout. So, act now with urgency, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's a point to echo, really, because, even worst / best case scenario, people think that NIST and various other bodies, and the dates will change depending on who you look and read, right? But 2030 seems to be the date that everybody's going. By 2030, it's probably going to be here, and previous style will be depreciated and various other bits and pieces. So we have a target. But as we know, if somebody goes, hey, I'm first to market, here's quantum, that moves forward. And it's caught everybody by surprise. The other thing that's interesting to note as well is that a lot of the threat actors out there are starting to now do something capture now and decrypt later type of scenario. They think it's imminent, and that technology is going to be imminent and accessible to them within the next couple of years. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be thinking in that fashion. So all the stuff that you've got encrypted now, the sooner that that software that you're using or the systems that you're using supports quantum, just move to a quantum resistant algorithm, because you're safeguarding against that future threat. That's already in play today. That's happening. We know that for a fact. So if they think it's worth their while and their investment in time, money, effort, and all that sort of stuff, must be fairly imminent.
So talking about today and it being imminent, what are DigiCert doing right now, I guess, to prepare for what is the post-quantum threat, really?
So we fully support quantum resistant algorithms. We fully support private CAs around all that sort of stuff. You can instantiate that, stand that up within the DigiCert platform, deliver that in. We're just kind of waiting on the vendor support, really, on the other stuff to go, hey, you can actually use these quantum certs that we can issue. We're obviously sitting on the CAB forum. We're chairing some of the things around that. It's waiting for dates as well on the CAB forum for when they're going to roll that into public trust and go, actually, from a browser point of view, we're going to start supporting that. But there are some blocks to that in terms of a lot of the other infrastructure's got to catch up. So the operating systems have got to be capable of supporting it and things like that. Microsoft and others are pulling that in. So it's going to be imminent. But those building blocks need to be in place first before then CAB forum and stuff goes, hey, now we're quantum.
Maybe just to add to that as well, we as a vendor, we're obviously committed to innovation, just as many other vendors out there are as well. But again, when you look at this from what are we trying to do strategically, we've made two really strategic acquisitions in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, again, to try and look at that complete sort of trust layer that quantum could pose a threat to. So, I guess, higher level, it's obviously making sure that we are, as difficult it can be at times, to make sure that we're trying to sort of stay ahead of where the sort of industry changes are coming, to make sure that when we do go and sort of package this out to a customer, it's ready and locked and loaded for years to come as well.
Well, look, it's scary and exciting, really, in equal measures.
Yeah.
And I think we have got the benefit in this room of being in it, in the industry, right? And it strikes me that there certainly is a huge channel opportunity here.
Significant, yeah.
In terms of the certificate lifecycle management, in terms of the quantum piece, really, really clear that partners need to embrace this, need to get on the journey, right? So I guess, how are DigiCert supporting the partners in terms of that transition? Because, as we said, it is really new, and a lot of the partners aren't on that journey. So, what can they expect from us?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. First of all, the more we obviously understand what our partners' sort of aspirations and goals are in terms of what are they trying to provide to their customers is for me a starting point. Is it a services conversation? Is it a sort of set it and forget it sort of style sell that they're looking for? How do we help partners? We've got such a diverse portfolio, so simplifying that message, I think, is a starting point. It's easier said than done. Just as I'm sure many vendors you've already had in the seat, it's probably something they scratch their head with daily as well. But I think for us, making sure that we're driving a sort of business outcome sort of conversation, that for me removes the sort of the barrier of if you go down a rabbit hole from a technical standpoint, that's where things for me can become a little bit scary. I remember the days back in distribution. You've got 101 different things to remember at once, let alone throwing in the words quantum and shortening certificate life cycles. It becomes a little bit of a challenge. So, for us, we're all about trying to simplify the message for our partners. Again, going back to the point I mentioned earlier, a lot of what we sell underpins what our partners are already pushing out to the market today. So looking for, I guess, some sort of natural synergy and overlap that they can go and broker a conversation with in simple terms.
Perfectly put. And Andy, from your side, I think if there was one thing from what we've discussed today that the partner should really take away from, and I know there's been a lot, but what should it be?
One, there's a huge opportunity to act now. There's a definite market need for this, so that the opportunities to act now. The second thing, and the biggest thing for me, is this is not a fear message. So we're not banging the doom drum. It's not a fear message. Actually, there's a real proactive message here and positive spin that can be put on this. And, yes, there are drivers that are forcing this in place, but now you have a tool and a new way of thinking about things that actually improves your security as a business or as an organization. Why wouldn't you want to embrace that? Because that's actually what's going on here. We're not, the world doesn't collapse. we have a chance to improve it. And that actually, for me, is the most interesting thing here around all of that.
Okay, so I guess, look, if we were going to sum up what the next 12 months looks like in one world around this digital trust piece, what would we be saying? What do you think it looks like? And I think just on that point, I'd love to get you back in 12 months to see the predictions that we've made and, you know, the deadlines that what has changed. So we will come back to it.
I think for me, if I use one word, it would be, you know, acceleration. This market isn't going to stand still, regardless of whether or not our partners do something about it or not, regardless of whether or not we're sat in this room or not. The market is moving. You know, it's going to grow probably in excess of 20% year on year. It's predicted to be 25 billion by the end of 2032. So, you know, again, it is a period of change. It's very rare, again, for me, that tailwinds come along like this. And I think you mentioned it earlier. You know, it's not necessarily a nice to have. This is a must have. So, yeah, I think, you know, 12 months from now, hopefully we'll be true to our predictions that, you know, we and our partners see significant growth without necessarily having to reinvent the wheel. I think that's also important. You know, it's just being a little bit closer to the sort of industry changes, embracing the changes I've mentioned before, partnering sensibly. You know, again, we've spoken a lot about, you know, a couple of topics today: certificate lifecycle, quantum. You know, DigiCert's portfolio goes much, much wider than that. So, you know, we can be a consolidation route for partners as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting because 2 or 3 words popped into my head when you said this. And I'm a bit like, which one shall I go with? But the one I've settled on is empowerment. This is really empowering for end customers, for partners, for the security industry as a whole. Actually, we're about to actually grow up and understand PKI. It's going to come out the cupboard finally after like 20 odd years or whatever, and it's going to kind of take its rightful place as a really cool, interesting, useful security tool that can empower a lot of change and good across businesses and organizations.
Yeah, and actually, I'll just add, I remember when I interviewed at DigiCert earlier this year, and I actually said in my interview, "God, certificates, they're not very exciting." So I'm surprised they got the job, but it actually is exciting. You know, we underpin so much that's out there, and as Andy quite rightly just said, the empowerment that our technology provides, I think, has been often overlooked and certainly taken for granted. So, you know, the value that, you know, partners can add to their customers by amplifying the importance of proper PKI and digital trust in the ecosystem that we find today is certainly going to, you know, return a significant you know, return for them as well.
Totally. Well, look, as I've already mentioned, I'd like to get you guys back and almost, you know, see where the world is after our own predictions and recommendations, etc.
Sure.
I think if partners and users out there want to stay close to this, want to continue to follow the news and the updates, etc., other resources, etc., that they can really tie into, where should they be looking to find more on DigiCert and this story?
Well, look, first thing, reach out to Kite,
Of
reach
course.
out to ourselves. You know, we're doing a huge amount, I guess, as a vendor at the moment to, I guess, drive more awareness around the topics that we've spoken about today. You know, we're doing a lot of sort of in-person sort of thought leadership style events. That's not going to change going into next year. If anything, we're going to be busier. You know, our team's growing, so, you know, our message is being amplified. But, you know, I just go back to what I said. You know, be inquisitive, reach out to us. You know, embrace the conversation. You know, remember that we've got, you know, Andy and I are, you know, two people of a much bigger team, right? So, you know, embrace the resource that vendors can give, and yeah, reach out to us.
Yeah, just be curious, ask questions of everybody really, because all the topics affect the whole ecosystem. So for partners, start thinking about and asking questions across your ecosystem. Who's doing what? What are you thinking on this? When are you going to start supporting this? That's really critical for you. And then you've got all the resources that DigiCert provides and Kite provide to help that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. And I think, look, Kite and DigiCert will be with the partner all the way through that journey. Lots of resources to throw at them. And I think we've also got some physical and digital assets as well.
Yeah.
Namely the new dummies guide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we, again, I guess in effort to try and simplify a lot of what we've done, we've actually sort of released a dummies guide to sort of quantum. So again, talking about quantum readiness, maybe tying in some of the TLM messaging that we've spoken about today. And look, that alongside world class partner portal, a heap load of sort of assets in there, a lot of content in there that we actually use ourselves internally as well. So sort of taking our message within, but trying to obviously channelize that out to a partner as well. So partner portal, obviously our website's a good place to start as well. Sort of lots of use cases on there. And also there's a section on our website talking around the message I mentioned earlier around how we can complement other vendors already within our partners sort of ecosystem stack as well. So
fantastic.
Sure.
Well, what we'll do, we always talk about takeaways. So as a takeaway from the podcast, when it goes live, we'll put a download link to the Dummies Guide to Quantum 2.
Sure.
I think that'll be a great place for the partners to start, right?
Absolutely. And look, good excuse to the next time we're hosting an in-person event, come and collect a sort of physical copy as well. We do often hand them out in person. Go down a treat as well. So yeah.
Ah, love it. Absolutely love it.
Sure.
Oh, what a great way to finish. And I think, so thank you very much for joining me. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Huge
great.
opportunity, and we will revisit. I guess before we revisit, if there are any guests that you would like to get into the studio to go through this experience, etc., is there anyone that you'd like to see and hear on our podcast?
Any thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you've had one of the people already. So a guy I used to work with a long time ago, Tim. So you've had him on. So taking that one off the list. For general vendor, no. I mean, there's a couple of really cool sort of thought leadership sort of threat guys like James Line and stuff like that still around and doing stuff. They'd be really cool to get on and kind of do that. So I think for me that would be probably who I'd recommend.
Yeah, for me, I'd actually love to see Will Craven in this seat. So he runs our UK sales organisation.
Okay.
Getting very close to, I guess the local market that we find ourselves in. Every conversation I have with Will, he has an analogy for everything. So I'm pretty confident, again, if it's not too distant from now or even in 12 months from now, he paints such a clear picture on what this market opportunity looks like. But also, again, the analogies attached to the problems we help solve. That, and he's just a great speaker as well. So
okay,
yeah.
And just to finish on, any questions as well? In terms of this market, what questions should we be asking these guests as well? What would you like to hear?
I guess collectively, where else can we, as a channel collective, where else can we complement what we're doing? Because I always think, channel again, we're always part of something bigger.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
And I often find, I've sort of obviously changed companies early this year, moving across from Proofpoint. Again, even when I look back at the technology I was selling to partners then, so much of what we now do complements what else is already out there. So, I mean, for that would be my question: is how can we complement each other more? It's a relatively tough and lonely world out there at times. So,
I think it's a great point to finish on.
Yeah.
I think, look, in our day-to-day world, whether or not you're a vendor, distributor, or partner, we're all in competition.
Yeah,
day to day.
Sure.
The reality is, we're all in complete collaboration, aren't we, to solve
Absolutely.
these challenges that the customers have. So
and I think, just to add to that, lastly, I think partners want that as well. Gone are the days of being able to queue at a sort of, a partner's sort of rep desk and try and have a 5-minute pitch conversation. They don't have the time or bandwidth available. So wrapping it all up, simplifying it, complementing each other's message, and sort of amplifying it along the way, I think partners would actually benefit from too. So,
well, Tyler, you mentioned it, right? Customer acquisition is just really difficult.
Yeah.
We've got to make it simpler.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, thanks again. Really enjoyed having you both on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Hope to see you again soon.
We'll be back.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.
And from me, I've been Stuart Nairn Clark. Please follow the Kite Channel Lounge on the usual channels. You can find us both on Spotify and YouTube, where you can subscribe to see this episode and all past episodes. Speak to you again soon. Thank you.